Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we're going to make 2 cards, and I'm going to show you this technique for getting a couple done at once with very little waste, because I think it can be kind of daunting to be done with a card then be like, oh, I gotta make an envelope, or oh, I gotta pick up this mess. This is going to show you a way to make a couple cards and kind of use up your scraps as you go, and that way you have very little waste when you're done to either file or to throw away. So what I've done already is taken 1 sheet of cardstock and cut it in half and scored it. So I'm going to be making 2 size 2 cards. So right there, no waste on our card base. The next thing I've done is I've pulled out a couple stamps that are from the same stamp set from our sponsor Art & Echo. These are brushstroke cats. They're just adorable, and we're going to be stamping on some photo paper or glossy cardstock. I personally like photo paper for this technique because it dries quicker and the results are really bright and it doesn't fade, whereas glossy cardstock's a little more expensive, harder to find, and the colors do fade a little bit on that. I also got a few shades of brown and 1 black marker here, and then I have 2 pieces of pattern paper, and I've got also a few embellishments and ribbon. I also have a little stencil. This is optional, and one thing that's optional but I really like is an envelope template. But I'm going to tell you a little trick. If you ever want to make an envelope, and it's going to be the same technique as I show you here pretty much, if you ever want to make an envelope for a card and you're not sure how, or you don't have a fancy template, what you need to do is take your card and then you want to measure it from corner to corner. And I have to thank my friend Christine, Style Harmony on YouTube, for giving me this tip. So you measure corner to corner. This is 7 inches. So if I cut an 8-inch square, so I take that measurement, add 1 inch, and cut a square of paper that size. If I cut an 8-inch square, then I'll be able to put this on the diagonal and fold around the corners and make an envelope. So it's going to be the same technique as this. So when I'm using one of these templates, this is a Kreatalope from Greensneakers. I happen to really like this particular template. I think they're kind of more difficult to find now, but I like it because I can just tear my paper against the template, and then I put my middle part back in. So if I was just cutting paper, I'd cut it to 8-inch squares and I'd set my card right in the middle. Then you're going to fold your paper around, and you can fold it so the print's on the inside, so it will be easy to write an address on. And then one other thing I like to do, rather than just glue it down like this, what I like to do is actually open it back up and use my scissors to just notch out these edges. Of course, if you have the envelope punch board, you could do that too. I just find this is a little bit quicker for me. And then I don't bother with the bottom 2 notches. I just use my adhesive to seal it up. And then when it's time to mail it, I either just grab this adhesive again, or I just stick a piece of washi tape on it, and that even adds another little decorative touch. So there is my envelope. So I'm going to do that with both of those pieces of paper, and what I love is that I'm going to end up with these scraps left over to decorate my card with. So I'm going to make another envelope and I'll be right back. And I've got my 2 envelopes made. Now if you're working on a light piece of paper, you can make it with a pattern on the outside, which is really pretty. And of course, if you want to do the pattern on the outside of a darker envelope, you can. You just would want like a little mailing label or something so that you can clearly address the label so it gets to its recipient. So I'm going to set these aside because we're going to use these to decorate our card base, but first I'm going to get my stamping done. And what I'm going to do is use any sort of stamp that's got a really bold design. I think works really well for this. Okay, now we're going to ink up our stamp, and we're using markers today, and sometimes the ink wants to bead up a little bit, so I'm hoping that I can get a good impression. But if it's beading up a lot like that, here's a trick that you can do. Start with a really light shade of ink and kind of coat it. Give it a nice base coat. So stamping ink is a little bit less watery than your marker, so it will give you a good kind of solid design to work on. So that would basically be what this light caramel color is, and then I can go on it with my other colors like I would. It's also important to make sure if you have a new stamp that you wash it before you try this technique, because I notice if there's any sort of like residue from the manufacturing process, it does make it it wants to resist the ink or make the ink bead up. So you just want to make sure that you're giving it its best chance for getting a really good impression. And then with the black, that's really what makes the design kind of pop and stand out. You just kind of tap it and dab it, give it some patchy chunks, and that's going to really look the most natural if you do that. I like to accent the whiskers too. And then before you stamp, what you want to do is breathe on it, and your breath will moisten the ink. and then just stamp straight down. And I've got a little piece of fun foam under here so that it'll give me a little bit of squish while everything is transferring across. Don't do this with clear stamps on photo paper because it could just bond immediately. And there we've got a sweet little a little cat there. So to add some decoration to the outside, I thought it'd be fun to kind of take a stencil. Now on photo paper, it's going to dry almost immediately. If you are using glossy cardstock instead, it will still be wet at this point. You just want to give it a little more time to dry. I'm going to grab a sponge and some ink here, and I've just got my regular old Distress ink. I keep my ink pads pretty juicy, so I'm actually tapping my dauber off on my lid just because I know that I like to keep them really, really wet. And then I'm just going to do a little sponging in the background because I just want to give it a little bit of pattern because it just is really, really big and white there. I am going to trim this down, but I like to have just something in there so I can have, you know, just a little bit of interest here. I'm just gonna, oops, I went over the cat a little bit, but I'm gonna try to avoid the cat when I do this. And this one doesn't repeat perfectly, but I think it's good enough. This stencil came in a kit from Die Cuts with a View. It was like a paper pad and it had some stencils with it. But any sort of small, I think, kind of pattern stencil will look really nice with this technique. Oh, I think that's really, really sweet. And so I'm going to let that dry a little bit more and then I can trim it to go on my card. The next one, I've got this cat here. I'm going to do the same technique where I add the ink first, just because large areas of rubber sometimes give me a hard time with the rubber stamps. And I'm just going to kind of dab in some of the darkest brown and then a little bit of black. I thought the secondary, this shade here was too close to the ink pad color for it to work. Maybe give it a little bit of accent in the face there, maybe a little bit over here in the tail. It looks like my cat when she's on the prowl trying to catch a mouse or something. Now I'm going to breathe on it again. And this time I think I'll put it up here just because I know I'm going to trim. It'll just be a little easier for me to visualize where I'm going to trim it. Oh my gosh, that's so cute. Isn't that adorable? Oh my gosh, I just love it. And then again, I'm going to go over it with my stencil. I like this particular stencil design just because it reminds me of like something you might see on like an origami paper or a kimono. It just has a very simple, almost Japanese-like design, and I think it's really nice. And we're keeping the color scheme fairly limited, so it takes away some of the anxiety that we might have about deciding what to do. Let's zoom out a little bit so we can kind of see our other materials that we have to work with. And you can close up your ink pads and set them out of the way. And I decided to work just on cream card bases. White would look just as nice, really, since the photo paper has a lot of white in the background. And I think that I might actually use a die cut to trim these down, just to give me a different sort of look. And I'm thinking that I'll probably use the some of this paper just simply for a background. Now I kind of like that kind of torn edge, so what I think I'll do is just grab my ruler here, kind of set it whereabouts I'd want to tear it, and just pull it across. And that's pretty darn easy. So, and when you're making two cards in this manner, it's like the work of making one card, because you're literally doing all your steps in tandem. And we're going to make some happy birthday cards here, so it's really extra great because you always need birthday cards and you get two done at once. And it kind of gets you, sometimes you don't just want to stamp a stamp just for the sake of making something. You want to have something to show for it, so those stamps can kind of sit in your stash unused for a while. This gets them used, and it you know, then you can see how your stamps behave, and it'll give you more ideas in the future of what to do with them. So I just like to lay it down there to tear it right on top of my card base so I can kind of see what kind of border I want. I just want a little sliver of that background showing. You don't need any fancy tools for this, guys. Look at this. I'm using a ruler. I've probably had this ruler since I was in high school. Who knows? You know, or I take it from my kids. I don't know. You know, so you can be extremely frugal with your supplies. Use what you have. and make use of some of those papers that come in those like multi-packs, and then you have so many, and it's like, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do with all these? I have so many. Okay, so one of my cards I think I'll have going upright like this, and I think I'll have one horizontally. So I'm gonna hop over to my die cutter and choose a couple dies that I can cut these out with, and I'm also gonna bring this lighter color paper with me too, and see if I can maybe cut a mat out of the lighter color. So I'll be back in a second after those are cut out. Okay, so this one is pretty easy. I just did circles because I do have a set of really close nesting circles, but because the background's light and that's a light pattern, it's hard to see the difference between the matte and that and the focal point. So I'm just going over it with a little bit of ink. And somebody just asked me how I make my sponge daubers. So basically I take a makeup wedge, just the kind you get at the dollar store, I fold it in half and glue the ends into a bottle cap. And I've also made some with chess pieces, and those are for my Distress Oxides, and these are for all my other dye-based inks. So I thought I'd just repeat it really quick in case anybody had wondered that. And honestly, I don't know if it's just because I'm used to them, but for me they work better than like the store-bought ones by Ranger. Because I did recently purchase them just to see if I was missing out on something, and turns out it wasn't. For me anyway, mine worked just as well. I'm going to do the same thing here and just gently get the edges. See, I have a hard time getting a really soft blend on the edge with the store-bought ones, but I'm sure it's just whatever you get used to. I'm not saying throw away your store-bought ones if that's what you have, but it's probably just whatever you're used to, I imagine. So for this, I was thinking it'd be kind of fun to, like, because kittens and string and everything, it would be fun to add a little string as an embellishment to this one, especially because I almost feel like I trimmed a little too much off, and I lost too much background, and it was kind of a big image for this size card now that I think about it. But then I thought, you know what? Any sort of mistake is just an opportunity to learn something new, to try something new, you know, right? Because what do you got to lose? So I thought, and this paper's kind of flimsy, so I didn't want to just poke holes in the paper itself, so I'm going to actually go through all my layers here. I'm going to go back and grab that foam that I used for stamping. The other good thing it's really good for is a cushion for like poking holes before you put brads in. And I know a lot of us have brads in our stash, because when I asked people what supply they're just drowning in, a lot of people had a lot of brads still. And I actually still use mine a lot, so I'm just going to grab about 4 brads here. These are the mini brads. Now, of course, everything that I do on a card is optional. I don't want you to feel like you have to do it just like me. We all should do our own thing. I'm going to put these in kind of loose. I'm going to try to put them in a little looser, just so I'll be able to wrap string around them and give it kind of a nice little kind of string frame. And so when I open up the back, I'm just going to try not to have them too flat yet. I can flatten them down for firmer in a second. Just try to get them. So I'm not like, I'm just kind of opening them up a little. I'm opening up so they don't pull through, but I don't have them like really tight to the back of the paper. And then I'm going to go around with some baker's twine here. And you could use yarn, you could use embroidery floss. I just happen to have this. This was my handiest string that I had, so that's why I'm using this. You use whatever you got handy. If you got some, you know, craft thread, whatever you have, it's totally fine. And that actually locks them down pretty well. Let's try to tuck the knot over here by this brad so it's not so noticeable. Just do a little double knot there. Whoops. There, I know that's tight because it just wanted to pull out. There we go. I don't think I want to cut it too short just in case that knot pulls out though, so I might just leave a little tail. I'll see what to do with that later. I'm just going to leave a little tail for now though. After looking at the string on here, I realized I don't have enough room to put the ribbon that I wanted to underneath without detracting from my little frame here, so I decided I would use one of these little buttons as an embellishment. And I've got quite a cute little assortment here, and I think maybe this one would go really well with the scheme. I'm going to zoom in a little bit for you here. And when I have these little buttons, they have these little shanks on the back, and to remove them you simply take some flush cutters. You might have them from like jewelry making or maybe even in your toolbox, and I just snip them off, and then I can stick that right on my card. And I like this little ball of string too, so I think I'm going to put them both on there. And I'm wondering, maybe I can shift this so I can hide my, well, you know what? If you're doing this, I'm not going to mess with mine, but knot it over a little bit so you can cover it up with embellishment. That's what I should have done. I might be able to a little bit, but Really, that would have been a better idea, but that's all right. It's still going to be cute. I'm just going to use a little hot glue. You can use any sort of, you know, thick glue for this, and it's going to work fine. I'm just using hot glue because I know it'll catch immediately. And get my little, which is funny that this comes in that button thing, but it has no button thing on it, you know, like it's, so it's like, well, obviously people are buying these for embellishments and not to use as buttons, so there. So this can be a blank card, and then you can decide what you want it to be later on. The next card we're going to do, we are actually going to make it a happy birthday card. Like I mentioned, I wanted to use ribbon in one of these little ribbon charms on the other one, but I just didn't have the room, so I didn't want to force it. I am going to adhere this down. And there's no rule as to how many or how few embellishments you have to have. So if you don't want to put any embellishments on, you don't have to. So on this card, I wanted to definitely use the ribbon kind of along the bottom there, but I also really liked the string I used on the other card, so I think I'm going to do both of those techniques. So again, you grab your foam. It just makes it so much easier if you pre-poke your brad holes, because it just keeps your card looking so much neater. Actually though, you know what? I bet I can just wrap this around and cut it short, and it's going to be fine, because once we tighten those brads on the back, I think they're going to hold it. So then just squash those brads really well in the back. Maybe turn that one a little bit because it's there, gonna be sticking into the seam. Yeah, I think I can. Let's see if I can. We'll snip it. We'll see if it pulls out or not by the end of the video. Hopefully not. I think it's gonna be all right. All right, so now I want to be able to add the ribbon. I really like the way that looks. It's very simple, but I think effective. Because I want to add ribbon, I don't want to, you know, tie my card shut. So I'm gonna need to cut a little bit of a slit on the edge, and to do that, I need my trusty X-Acto knife. I'm just gonna go right on the crease, just like that. Okay, I just got a slit here on the spine so I could feed some ribbon through, because I want to attach one of these tags. Now, I had to do a little editing because I actually broke the last tag that I tried to attach, and I think it's because this ribbon is too thick to try to tie a knot and then attach the charm to that. So I think I'm just going to tie on my little knot and then attach the ribbon the charm next to it, because I've just never had that happen to me before. This is one of these crazy card making days where my entire project is a blooper reel, I guess. So I'm just going to trim that right from the spool. I'm going to try this again, but boy oh boy, I'm having a really hard time with these things today. I really hope this one works out for me. Maybe these are just so old because they've been in my stash for so long that they are just gone weak. I don't know. So I'm going to add this right over here next to the knot this time. I'm going to go a little slower and see if that helps. Okay, oh good. We've got a good connection here. My goodness gracious, I was having a rough time here. And there we got that little charm on there. And then I did have some more of these little those little embellishments, and I thought they were so cute, and I thought I might just add a couple of these. I don't know, I don't want to overdo it because I do have that. I really love the yellow of this little fish head, this little fish bone, but a cat wouldn't be chasing the fish bone, but they would be chasing a little mouse. So I thought maybe I'd put the little mouse down there, and I really like the color of it. I like that little, bringing that color over there, so I'm gonna add it. But of course, you know, you don't have to do that if you don't want to. I'm going to try to be really not use too much glue because I don't want to squish out. But there's that card. Our envelopes are already made, which is nice. The template that I used is a Kreatalope by Greensneakers. I'll show you that really quick, but if you can't find them, remember, just measure your card. See, I'm going to show you here this again. You measure your card corner to corner, 7 inches, so you add 1 inch, so you'd have an 8-inch square, which is probably right about what this is. Honestly, yeah, this is just a hair under 8 inches. And then you just lay your card on the diagonal of your paper and you'd fold up all your corners, and that's a way to do it without the template. So I like this because I can just rip against it, but hey, it's nice to be able to know how to do this without an envelope, because I mean without a template, just because it saves you time. Sometimes I'll sit down, take a stack of papers and just make a bunch of envelopes when I'm watching TV, just so I have them. But I think it's even better to make the envelopes while you're making the cards, because then you have a coordinating envelope and you're ready to go. You don't have to hunt around for an envelope after you make a card or go out and buy envelopes. You can use up some of the paper that you probably have mountains of if you're anything like me. So I hope you found this useful. If you want to find the stamps I used, you can find them from our sponsor, artneco.com. If you mention the Frugal Crafter when you order, you'll save 10% on your order, which they refund to you after you place your order, and or you get free shipping if your order's over 50. So they're an amazing company, nice people right here in the United States, and make the products right here. Well, they're stamps anyway. They do have some imported beautiful mulberry paper if you want to check that out, but top-notch folks, and a really great selection too, including these little cat stamps that I used today. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please give me a thumbs up, and until next time, happy crafting.